better deal.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin today with Jason Perry. He's the director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Jason, always glad to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be with you.
All right, wanted to get you on to discuss the first 4 months of some of our newly elected leaders here in the state of Utah. Let's start with the commander-in-chief of the state, Governor Spencer Cox. How do you assess his first 4 months in office?
Well, you have to give him an A right now for those first 4 months. And mostly I say that because you start looking at the polling, what's happening over his time in office. And the reality is every single month since he has been in office, his numbers have gone up. In this last month with our polling, he's at 66%. And all of that, of course, is tied directly to one big issue, and that is how is he doing with the COVID-19 vaccination program here in the state of Utah? And because that seems to be going well, his numbers are going up. That's a big one.
Yeah, COVID definitely defining his first 4 months and even into the future, no doubt about that. As you mentioned, Utahns like how he's handling it.
Well, they really do. And I think there's a point coming here in the very near future where Utahns are going to say, what's happening next? And he's going to have to start pushing Utahns to really, those that are hesitant right now to get that vaccine, that's going to be the next point for him. Can he put enough carrots out there for him and for people to say they're willing to get that vaccine? Can they push out the mobile clinics enough? Can he penetrate into the state of Utah enough that our numbers keep coming down so he can open the economy? If he can do that, the next 4 to 5 months are going to be very positive for him as well.
So we mentioned the majority of Utahns like the way he's handling it, but there are always the fringe on both sides. Some people want him to get rid of mask mandates in school right now. You know, yesterday wasn't soon enough. Others think it needs to continue. How does he balance those different mindsets moving forward?
Yeah, well, the answer is very carefully. I mean, we saw that on full display just this past week when the Republicans met for their convention. And I mean, here's what's interesting. You know, a lot of people look at the state of Utah, which has historically been very red for a very long time, and they think, well, the Republicans, you know, they must be united in some way because they hold all of these statewide elected positions. But the reality is, even in a supermajority, you have huge factions, and it's to the degree to which one faction rises and another one is more silent. We saw that at the convention where you have a governor who's at 66%, as I said, widely popular in the state of Utah, and still can be booed by a certain section of the Republican Party. It's really, really hard to navigate that. So really, you have two game plans. You try to work with that part of the family, and it is the family, even if they're not with you all the time, while you still try to keep mainstream Republicans in your camp. And Governor Cox has kept the mainstream Republicans with him, but he's also done exceptionally well with Democrats and also with the people who are unaffiliated in the state. And that's a very unique position for a governor to be in.
Yeah, during the legislative session, Democratic lawmakers were giving him 2 thumbs up on his budget and other things, and you don't typically see that. So good point there. He also went on record at the convention, you brought that up. He said he's not going to lift the mask mandate the rest of this school year, but he did go on record saying it will not be back for school children next year. So we'll see how that plays out.
Huge statement from him right there. And that's one of the things that got applause from that particular group. So you can see that there are certain issues there the governor's going to weigh on that's going to bring that particular faction, the more conservative elements, back to his side.
Yeah, that balancing game that you talk about. Let's talk about social media. This is an elected official, a governor, that uses social media like we've never seen before. How's that playing out?
Well, it's pretty good, but it's fraught with peril. I mean, here's the thing. With elected officials, in the old days, you'd have all these events in pre-COVID where you would go and you'd meet with people, you'd have these town halls, you go to all the dinners. People are not able to do that. But often, particularly for a governor, because I've worked with these offices in the past, there's this idea that maybe I can shake enough hands, I can see enough people, and that's how I will get my message across. But that's not the case anymore. Clearly not the case, and I think that's why we've seen Governor Cox really take to social media. He did it a lot as the lieutenant governor, and we're seeing him do it more of a moderated tone, maybe a little less often, but still, this is a primary mode of communication for our governor right now. And anytime you're hitting that big group of people, you're going to have some of your detractors, but he's using it exceptionally well right now, and I think he's going to use that throughout his time as governor.
Yeah, there is a level of toxicity through social media that you don't get face-to-face as well, and I have seen him lament you know, at some of those comments that he's making, but he does seem committed to continuing that path. His lieutenant governor, Deidre Henderson, he puts her up front and center quite a bit. What's the strategy there? And really, when you kind of take a look at what he was like as lieutenant governor, he was also in that same boat.
Well, it's true. And he sort of changed some of the traditional roles of the lieutenant governor when he was in that role. He was very active. He was put in charge of the pandemic response for a period of time. He had a very high profile position as the lieutenant governor, so he brings some of that perspective into the job now. But also for Lieutenant Governor Henderson, she was really important to him when he was running for this office. She brought a lot of votes from Utah County. She's a former legislator. She helps kind of work with those particular elements, not just of the party, but the people that the governor cares about. So he is just keeping the good influence that she brought to the ticket with him with an elevated role, and she has had that. You'll see her in all kinds of meetings right now. You'll see her when they're doing bill signings, for example. High-profile events, you're going to see the governor, but you're going to see Lieutenant Governor Henderson with him as well. That's a new sort of role for the lieutenant governor, and it seems to be working very well.
Let's move on to a couple members of the congressional delegation. Representative Blake Moore, a freshman, following Representative Rob Bishop. How is he filling those shoes? Bishop held that seat for 18 years.
Well, for such a long time, and Jim Hansen for a really long time before that. I mean, you look at the last many, many years, 2 members of Congress right there. So what's important for Congressman Moore really is to kind of keep the key issue that they had in that district. And it's really one, and it's Hill Air Force Base. How do you protect all of the jobs in northern Utah? And Congressman Moore has done a great job. He already got put on the most important committee to do that, the House Committee on Armed Services, which puts him really in a position to protect. I think he's been doing a lot of listening so far. He's been meeting with all the constituents in his district. He started his own caucus, the Millennial Caucus, they call it, where he's just trying to reach out to that element. I think he's done a really good job positioning himself, and he's on the right committee, because if you want to be reelected in that district, you've got to take care of the jobs and Hill Air Force Base.
Talk about a tumultuous start to a congressional career. The impeachment vote and insurrection right off the top. How did he handle those events?
Well, can you imagine? Those are the votes you have in your first couple of days of being elected to office. Welcome to it. Your first couple of votes is whether or not to impeach the president or certify election results. So that was a very difficult position, but Congressman Moore joined the other members of our delegation in the House in his vote on impeachment. So I think he really found his pace right there, and also when it comes to the election results, he found the ground where I think his district was wanting him to be, where he's also able to be, particularly on impeachment with other members of his caucus. I think he's handling a tightrope pretty well, but keep in mind, even for him, elections again next year. It's just such a difficult position for him to be in, for a new person in that role, but I think he's navigating it pretty well.
Yeah, you're pretty much, you get elected and then you're running for election again in the House seat. Let's talk about Representative Burgess Owens. He has not shied away from being vocal.
That is the absolute truth. I mean, you look at Congressman McAdams in that particular role as a Democrat, try to push towards the middle a little more. So that's why you saw his commercials. Got Republicans and Democrats all getting off the bus to support him, more of a moderate tone. We've not seen that with Congressman Burgess Owens at all. He's been very, very vocal on some key issues. He has been one of the people in the party that has taken the biggest shots at the current administration. And it's a difference for him. He's embracing the Republican Party in every sense. And that's going to be an interesting district to watch going forward. Remember, he won by 1 point.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, all right. And even to see what the lines look like next time around, right? Jason, always great perspective. Enjoy having you on this show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.